It appears that this music has a particular attraction to kids who have problems, troubled kids. They're alienated from school, they're alienated from their parents, they tend to engage in more reckless behaviors like marijuana use, cocaine use, casual sex.
I think we're all so shocked at that, and I want to join in the chorus of outrage.
Demon Slayer is at least in the top 3 most popular anime, pretty much ever. It has cultural nods that appeal to its Japanese audience, has the fattest adaptational BBL ever, and is home to easily recognizable characters with distinct personalities, backstories, and powers. So, why is it so mid?
Yo, Pierre!
Don't get me wrong, the arc that Ufotable is currently adapting is nothing to scoff at, and the Red Light District was pretty fun, but the journey to get there was just so... it just wasn't anything special.
I mean, it's alright!
Season 1 is a bore, Mugen Train only has one really good fight people remember, and the Swordsmith Village was just bad. Even Demon Slayer fans agree with that. In addition, I am of the minority that thinks Tanjiro's central family conflict is weak. Yet for some reason, me being in the minority in that has always confused me. Whether it be FMA making such a strong case for the two leads as, well, brotherhood, Killua, Maki, or Todoroki's family subplot being a dominant mainstay in their respective stories, there's just something about Tanjiro and his family that just seems so underdeveloped. The story kind of just expects you to care about Nezuko and her eventual return to humanity, and the story expects you to root for Tanjiro every step of the way, wanting you to feel how he feels about all of his siblings, without doing any of the legwork to get you to care besides the initial shock value of, oh my god, those f***ers are dead. Like, for such a backstory heavy story, you would think it would make ample time to really explore what the Komandos meant to each other, what their life was like before the incident. But instead, the story constantly brushes it aside, which would be one thing. This medium is certainly not new to family subplots being shallow, but when it's the basis for power-ups like Hinakami Kagura, or say, our cast's main objective being flipped on its head as one of our leads conquers the very conflict of the story, it kind of makes it impossible to ignore. Nezuko conquering the sun is so random, so unbelievably out of nowhere that it genuinely made me feel like I missed an arc. If you've been paying attention, Nezuko's blood is special. As a kid, her mother would feed her the very same flowers that Muzan has been hunting the entire time, which is a fact that is also revealed randomly. And that's why she's all of a sudden able to do what she does. How the f was I supposed to know that? Frankly, Demon Slayer has made me acquainted with its random bullshit gimmick. When you try to ground your story so much so that you deny the tangibility of everyone's superpowers, but you let the f***ing birds talk, I kind of just stopped giving a shit about logic in this weird-ass universe. Just put the Sakuga in the bag. You knew this was coming. This should have been the end of Chainsaw Man. Not that the series should have ended here, but any respect, adoration, or second chances after the abysmal chapters that preceded should have immediately had the plug pulled on it. You can cut this chapter out of the series and nothing changes. Denji gets jerked in an alleyway, a is left crying, and it is entirely pointless to the overall plotting of the story. It is so grotesque, it's so ugly, and it is entirely meaningless. Oh, you mean to tell me that Denji is easily abused, that Yoru isn't that great of a person and will use the feelings of others to satisfy instincts? It's a good thing that the rest of the story covered that already, dumbass. Seriously, the whole Yoru being a dick thing is what this entire section of the story is about. So not only is this chapter redundant, it's just insensitive. The softness in which Part 1 discussed Denji's sexuality is replaced with senseless vulgarity. Part 1 was meticulous in how it handled the subject matter of growing up discovering things about your body and needs you were unaware of. This is the worst in a long line of moments that make light of Denji's plight. We're just writing rag at this point. So it ruins the overall tone of the story. It is entirely random, and all it does is repeat information about the characters we already know. So what was the point of this scene? Well, let's just say I don't think Denji was the only one getting a bit of release. I never want to say any story is a waste of time. I know, the irony. But there's merit to any experience, whether good or bad. And I especially don't want to say that about Black Clover, which unfortunately was the key to my heart at a time where every story was making me feel heartless. I let a lot of things about BC slide. The dialogue, revivals, certain one-note characters, all of its kishi moments, because Black Clover was always focused on its characters, their comfort, their happiness, their development. And that central focus on character in a manga sphere that was devoid of it, it just felt too refreshing to be distracted by its many flaws. But now that we're in the endgame, and Black Clover has shown that yes, it too can disregard character work like its brothers and sisters, I wonder if not killing Yami was a mistake. It was bad enough there was enough foreshadowing and passing of the torch opportunities to make the moment work, but more than that, because Spade wrapped up so many plot lines, maybe his death could have been an avenue for new ones. I mean, we visited his home, met his sister, and there's still more to explore with his past partner in crime, but we don't really get much out of it. That sense of reward the cast felt when saving the person who saved them didn't amount to anything, especially since he hasn't really done anything plot relevant since, you know, Spade. Yami not dying may have been the moment BC started to commit fully to its childish writing style, but as long as the story remained interested in developing its cast, honestly I would have been fine with that. But because the story is neglecting its cast anyway, I can't help but wonder if Yami dying would have given the story more opportunities to be character driven again. That's not to say that BC would have taken advantage of the death, as there's a slew of potential with the final arc's premise that Black Clover isn't taking advantage of currently. But at the very least, we could have opened doors, while also giving us a truly emotional and devastating send-off to what Black Clover used to be. Otherwise, why put me through a story with such little stakes and not make the sacrifice of stakes worth it in the end?
Strange. It feels like there's nothing there.
Yeah, let's just move on.
I think we can all agree that the protagonist is the character an author should put the most amount of effort into. However, when it comes to shonen manga, 9 times out of 10 that logic does not exist. The main reason for this is authors coddling their protagonists and being downright allergic to having them facing challenges. For example, so many people hate series like Solo Leveling, but subconsciously that's what you people want. A lot of shonen manga are written with the mindset of being power fantasies. Now, this doesn't just relate to physical prowess but also mental prowess, because the two go hand in hand. So when the protagonist is a Jehovah's Witness that gets their way, never actually has to adapt and evolve in regards to how they articulate their arguments to characters with conflicting ideals, you get Emma from The Promised Neverland. I hate having to use the term plot armor, but God as my witness, that girl is cheating. Every character in that damn series bends to her will when she applies even a little bit of pressure. Emma is a typical toxic positivity character in a dystopian world that believes that she can save everyone. So obviously the dynamic between her and the characters who are more grounded in reality and have pessimistic views on life should allow for more meaningful conflicts and developments, right? No, this series decides to make everyone on Emma's side chat GPT characters whose only purpose in life are to glaze her and validate her bullshit. It's so asinine because it was never like this in the first arc. Characters actually had agency instead of being Emma's yes men, which is why I'm going to say that chapter 153 has to be the worst one in The Promised Neverland. It emphasizes every single issue with this series. In The Promised Neverland, if you have an ideology that conflicts with Emma's, it does not matter, because Emma has gone to the Naruto school of Takno Jutsu. Hell, it's on the level of Itachi's Genjutsu abilities, which is crazy because that man was able to trick readers into believing that he was a well-written character. In a single chapter, Emma was able to dismantle the resolve of a character who had been building towards a revolution for years. Norman was so fraudulent for this. His story spends an entire arc showcasing how him and his subordinates are hell-bent on eradicating the demons and that there is nothing Emma can say to stop Norman on this path of revenge. We spend so many chapters showcasing how Norman's subordinates have deep-rooted trauma that can't be healed in the span of one chapter. But that's what we get. Emma just says no, and that's the end of the conflict. I'm not even joking, that's literally what happens on the page. It's such an infuriating manga because the changes to improve it are simple. Like, that's what legendary manga do. Togashi broke his fucking back and he did that. That's what legendary manga do. Blue Lock, legendary, was slandered at the start but came back. The Promised Neverland had one of the worst fall-offs I've seen since Sakamoto days. He didn't score, bro. He had no motion. Stop calling that manga legendary because it's running alongside Demon Slayer, the greatest shonen ever, Jujutsu Kaisen, a top 5 weekly shonen jump manga. Stop calling him that, because after season 1, it fumbled like Tokyo Ghoul. When the final arc started, Emma became a garbage character. The last good character in the series blew a 3-1-3-1 lead. Norman choked. Legendary. Chainsaw Man Part 1. Acte, Akane Banashi, even f***ing Kuroko no Basket, Ichi the Witch as a rookie, carrying the magazine. Haikyuu, legendary. These are legendary manga. Rent a Girlfriend is more legendary than The Promised Neverland. That's who we're talking about right now. Stop talking about The Promised Neverland like he's that guy. He's not that guy. He's Boruto tier, and he's garbage when it matters.
Okay, that's enough of that. Gojo vs Sukuna is easily the fan favorite when it comes to battles in Jujutsu Kaisen, and I hate it. And I honestly can't wrap my head around why this arc is so loved. Like, it actually bothers me seeing gas for it, because I am very self-aware with my criticisms. I know when I'm saying something disagreeable, feeling something that opposes common sentiments, and I can understand why some of the things I say get the reactions they do, because, well, I try as much as I can to listen when people tell me why they like something I don't. That's why when I say Jujutsu Kaisen is bad, I at least try to be jovial about it, you know, be a good sport, because I honestly do get where the love comes from. But especially now that the dust has settled, now that the series is over and we're well into a sequel for it, now that we're so far away from the weekly experience and being awestruck by the choreography, power system usage, now that we have confirmed unresolved and undercooked plotlines that spawned from this very fight, I feel like we should all see this fight for what it is, no? A really cool fight with, yet again, skipped character depth that would have came from time spent with Gojo after his return and before his death, and the conclusion that seemingly comes out of left field, not only because, well, I just figured we were in the business of dispelling these characters as weapons, but also just, you introduced this concept of shared love between the soulless and loneliness that comes from being the strongest of sorcerers, what, a few weeks ago? In a Sumiki fight no less, which you had to step on multiple characters just to even write, and now you're going to justify the death of a character who's been absent for years with that concept? It's just silly to me, that's all. You remember that rule about there being only one entry per series? So, this is the moment that JJK became incomprehensible for me. The moment that an annoying yet kind of harmless story that never bothered with finer details became yet another pseudo-intellectual darling that didn't know what it wanted to say, but the fans are more than happy to fill in the gaps for it.
Well, maybe the show's just not for you. I agree. Or maybe you're just not smart enough.
I put it really well in the video I put out forever ago, so watch that for more detail, but to summarize how I feel, the series can't decide if the universe's morality revolves around strength or not. It can't decide if the characters fitting into roles is right or not, because, well, if living as a weapon is something the story aims to criticize, why did Yuta do it? If strength shouldn't be the end-all be-all of the series, why was Sukuna our moral pillar for so long? Especially in this moment, Yuta becoming a monster closed the door on anything concrete the story could offer. A story that is filled to the brim with ideas, but a lack of purposeful writing choices that makes those ideas any smarter than the Bilu and Zayas live stream.
What you call it? The Ramadan Akbar. When they say something about Akbar, they be saying like Ramadan Akbar. You know what I'm saying?
Just when you think JJK's main message is clear, culture and community, despite the darker aspects of it, deserve to live in a world that doesn't assimilate those who are different, but embrace and console them. That same story throws it away the moment it allows a character to don the philosophy of someone who directly opposes all I just said, and turn a character who represented the tragedy of all of that to be used in such a dehumanizing way. After all, I saw Geto's downfall, Yuji closing off his demotions, Gojo's loneliness, Sukuna's loneliness. This story was about how awful it is to live in a society that squeezes out what makes us beautiful as individuals, until we need to squeeze out our own individuality to murder the final villain. It turned Jujutsu Kaisen from an underwritten story to an outright confusing one. But you know, maybe more on that in the future video.
What the f is the atmosphere? What is the atmosphere? Below?
Up until now, the order of these chapters has kind of been innocuous. I do think these chapters are probably the worst in their respective series, and while I do think the chapters on this list have gotten a lot worse as the video has gone on, the placement can obviously change when I get to read and watch more. So if you have a moment from an anime manga you think I missed or haven't read yet, please enlighten me. I definitely have a lot more to experience. Like, I'm just not confident Demon Slayer has the 10th worst anything. That being said, these next few might genuinely be up there for me, even when I do get more experience. Screw it, I've broken the rule already, what's another? I watched the Boruto movie maybe a couple of years ago, and I just have to say, I think the concept of Boruto is complete garbage. Not in the fact that watching a child who was driven away from his village, marking that village with a legacy and bloodline isn't satisfying to watch. I mean, Naruto is an icon for a reason, but his journey can only be satisfying if he doesn't end up passing on all of his troubles to someone else, while that someone else has to fight aliens. What is with mangakas? Can you stop it with the extraterrestrials? I didn't personally ask Naruto to become so highly political. While the politics for all of the ninja villages were present ever since the second arc, that wasn't the only thing Naruto was about. At the end of it all, Naruto was a story about hatred, how it blooms, how it corrupts, how it can be sanitized, how one takes the literal embodiment of their rage and uses those negative emotions to struggle and choose understanding and love while reaching out to others, because someone like him understands those feelings, those urges, more than anyone else. But sure, let's tackle discrimination and colonialism. The thing is, look, Naruto is really long. You would think all the time we spend on these topics, especially in the too complicated to explain but very controversial ways Naruto ended up resolving these topics, that you would expect the conflict to be done, you know, by the end, that we have something new to untangle when another journey is forced upon us by Shueisha suits. And in a way, we do have something new to untangle. It's just aliens.
So dumb, it's brilliant.
No! It's just dumb!
Combined with the repeat of childhood trauma that we spent years getting to the heart of in the original series. Jujutsu Kaisen, the cycle of curses. Attack on Titan, the cycle of war. Naruto, the cycle of hatred. The idea of a feeling or phenomenon going in circles. I mean, I guess in that sense, shonen manga have always had the decency to warn us that the entire story will just repeat seemingly throughout generations, and for all of eternity, making every triumph and resolution unsatisfying. I guess I just assumed we were all smart enough to know that's a stupid idea. It has been a debate as to what's worse, a story that was great but fell off, or a story that was always consistent in its mediocrity or shittiness. But I think that's the wrong way of looking at it. It isn't about the story's overall quality, it's about time management. You see, stories like Jujutsu Kaisen or KNY to me aren't as offensive as certain other stories because they're just not that long and don't have time to drastically change their qualities. Our connections to these stories just aren't that strong by virtue of them being half the length. That's why, inversely, even when Chainsaw Man was good, I still thought, for example, an MHA was better. It just had more breathing room to explore its themes. For all of its greatness, because Chainsaw Man was only 99 chapters, it just didn't have time to take advantage of the shonen genre to its fullest extent, or to put all of its porn influences to good use. Length isn't a determining factor in greatness or something truly horrific, but look at the magazine we're talking about. Multi-decade Japanese epics made to spark the courage in younger boys, and at times show them just how cruel the society they're growing up in can be. To a certain extent, with certain topics, you just need more time to explore them. And if that time is spent well, then suddenly not spent well, you're probably going to end up being the worst story. Let me ask you guys a question. What does the spread mean? Bleach has been over for 11 years, and yet no one can come to a consistent consensus as to what the hell is going on in this spread. Mind you, this is how Ichigo defeats the final villain of the series, and not just the final villain, some would argue he's the ultimate villain. Some would even argue he's the only villain.
Hey, look, some people need to be gone, bro. You know what I'm talking about, in order for shit to get better. He one of them.
It has been a decade and people don't know how the final battle concluded.
Is this your game?
I have one more Bleach video left in me. It is a series that not only represents everything I've come to hate about certain stories, but it is also the originator of a lot of the things I hate about those stories. But the fandom is so pretentious, vicious, hive-minded, and as I've come to realize, has control over the general anime manga zeitgeist that, combined with the confusing and dense, overly long nature of the story, it's very difficult and exhausting to make videos about the series. Especially since, if I'm being honest, there is a beloved moment that I've talked about to death that actually deserves this spot even more.
Stop the cap.
So how about I stop?
You can't do enough for nobody out here. So how about I stop?
It's unfortunately not a Jujutsu Kaisen where I love to hate it. I just want it to go away. But go away it shall. When Bleach's final core wraps up and its billionth shonen arena fighter flops, I will talk about it, especially since I know some anime onlys are and will follow me, so it'll allow me to speak my mind in a spoiler-free environment. So I'll just leave it at this. If we can't even figure out how the Thanos, nay, the Galactus of Bleach was defeated, then how the hell are we supposed to figure out anything else about this story? What'd that guy from Hamilton say? One last time? I think that's the right call. Horikoshi, teach me how to say goodbye. I said this in a previous episode, but I kind of have to reiterate. It feels really shitty to be a past fan of MHA. Not only do you have a fan base hell-bent on gaslighting passionate but disappointed individuals, but you have a collective of anime fans that don't and never truly cared about the series. The darker, more mature, the cooler, and philosophical manga always took precedent over this series. So when it fell off, everyone in the anime manga community just kind of shrugged. It was never that good. It was always Mickey Mouse. That's just simply not true. I've had a bucket list of sorts, popular anime that I just never got around to as a kid that I've wanted to check out in my adulthood. I haven't been the most consistent with that list, mind you, but I've experienced a good amount up to now, and what I can tell you is that still, when MHA was at its best, it toppled most series and at least was comparable to the so-called greats. Personal preference and bias is always going to shape how these conversations go, but not gonna lie, when we look at the story in its totality and what on average is the most important to people when it comes to storytelling, like a world full of detail, art that fulfills all the metrics and fundamentals that make the medium work so well, except maybe choreography, not a lot of power creep, consistent logic all around, and most importantly the most, time and attention given to the cast members, almost to a fault with its school arcs, because MHA chose to be a character-driven story and fully and lovingly commits to that mission, unlike its brothers and sisters. By those metrics, and I'm trying my best not to say the O word, MHA was a very well-told story. That's why I get so mad when people tell me or think to themselves that me hating MHA the way I do is somehow irrational, when people tell me the series is salvageable or it's only personal bias that makes me so heartbroken over the manga. Obviously, My Hero Academia scratches multiple itches when it comes to my evolving taste over the years, but even besides that, the story just worked, and people never really thought about that because they were too distracted with frankly worse stories. Like, Jujutsu Kaisen has no care in the world for its cast, Bleach plays coy with so many of its initial themes, and Naruto, even for people that grew up with it, was always bound to be a little inconsistent just by virtue of how long it is. It is totally fine for someone to not give a shit about MHA. As well written as I think it was, it can be cheesy. It can spend too much time in that damn school. It might not be as cool or meticulous as its shonen brothers. I totally get why someone would peep MHA and simply not like it. But what I'm trying to get you guys to understand is that there's a difference between personal preference and something being well put together. And if you're never acquainted with that difference, you're just gonna look at me crazy for even putting MHA this high. I mean, come on, Eli. Naruto has nationalism. Black Clover is a Nick Jr. special. Jujutsu Kaisen has Megami. There are way worse things out there, right?
This nigga's a homosexual.
I've got a riddle. What's the closest new age manga we have to the big three? What popular manga has come close to Bleach and Naruto with length, density, storytelling, and overall longevity? Shonen contradicting themselves later on in the story, or a shonen going from criticizing the status quo to supporting it, is nothing new, as I've hopefully shown in this video and in this series. But as mentioned before, it can hurt way more if the journey to get there was a long one, made worse if that journey was just so well written. Which is why I think MHA is just so much worse than everything else. It gave itself time to dive into its themes and then, almost on a whim, decided not to anymore. And then it decided that the themes it had were wrong and did everything in its power to go back on all of them, redacting all of the work it's done for 10 years and betraying the fans that fell in love with that version of the manga, almost as if the author was scared of his own work and second-guessed everything he did. It's never been about alliances or favoritism. MHA isn't just the worst because I liked it more. It has a cast of marginalized people while neglecting and punishing them, resulting in harmful rhetoric that could teach very bad lessons. It has victims of abuse that stick out for abusers, and while its national bias never reaches Naruto or AOT levels of bad, once again, I would argue those stories were never as critical of Japan's homogenous society as much as MHA. So how could I possibly just choose one worst chapter? The chapter where Izuku is abandoned for a decade by the same parasites that have been taking any semblance of individual development away from the story. The chapter where he loses his dream, encapsulating his suffering. The chapter where those same parasites forgave someone who basically doomed them all. The chapter where Horikoshi says those who are disenfranchised should shut up and smile. The chapter where Toga dies. The 4 chapters where characters needlessly come back after an amazing send-off. Well, how about a chapter that's the very culmination of all of that? The chapter MHA threw all of its gray and complex morality out of the window and chose to be a shallow story about good versus evil. Truly, the worst chapter in what I think is the worst shonen ever.